Hello everyone. So last week I published this video talking about how we architect Rails applications using Fizzy as an example, and I got several questions about Fizzy code base both before and after the video was released. So today I would like to address some of those questions. I think some questions would make for dedicated videos in the future, but I selected a few that I think I can go through today. And at the end of the video, I've seen that there is an area of interest, which is the view layer in Rails. So I'm going to share our philosophy and approach for views in our applications. So let's go. So the first question here by Matt is asking about the has-one goldness association and related model, and why are not using like a flag instead of an additional record for representing that cards are can be golden. Why aren't we using an additional a boolean column, I guess. So if we go to the card model and we go to the golden concern, we can find that association, which is indeed using a dedicated additional model, which is so there is like another table that we are joining against for filtering golden cards or for detecting whether a card is golden or not. So why we do this? So there are several reasons. Well, first of all, if we used a boolean column for this, it will be totally fine. This is not like, oh my god, it will be terrible, but I'm going to share the reasons. One thing is consistency. So, for example, a card can be closable, so you can close a card. So for representing that a card is closable, we have this has-one closure association, which is using this additional closure record. In this case, we went with that because when you use an additional record, you get like a date for free. So for representing when a card is closed at, which is here, so we can check what is the created at timestamp in the record. So we get that for free. At some point we removed that, but in Fizzy you could set reasons when closing cards. So you could say, oh, I'm closing this one as a duplicate, and that was stored in the card, and we were storing that at this model, at this closure model. So in that regards, you can extend like the quality of being closed with additional information. So a model or a table makes for a natural fit to do that. Now with golden cards, we are not doing that. We are not querying the date. We are not querying the we don't have additional information there, but it's kind of consistent with how we are modeling that a card can be closed. So in that regards, I think it's better or slightly better for consistency. We are using this. We are doing the same for example, a card is postponable, so we have the not now association or the not now additional record to model that. So we keep things consistent. Another, I think, good reason is filtering. So in Fizzy you can combine filters or you can filter cards by multiple conditions, and you can sort cards on multiple conditions. If we represented everything with columns at the card level, it will be. I mean, we will have to be very mindful about indexes, like composite indexes. So we will need to make sure that we have the right indexes in place, covering all the columns in the right order that someone can use when filtering for multiple conditions, which is kind of a hassle to do. This is simpler because by joining on additional tables, we get efficient filters just by having the right foreign key indexes in place, and we can combine those more easily, right? Without the column ordering in the index being a concern. So that's another good reason, I think. Okay, Ray is asking about how are the rules for fixtures, when to add fixtures or when to create objects. I would say, Ray, that the general idea we try to follow is we try to avoid creating new records in fixtures. Instead, we try to build a realistic set of fixtures, and by realistic I mean it represents data that makes sense if you were using the application as a user. So we don't have things like card 1, card 2, card 3, or closed card, I don't know, archived card. We try to use names that represent cards that a human will create, so that the fixture system is part of our seeding system. So you can play with the fixtures where you're using the app locally in development. So they need to make sense, or we try them to make sense. And they should be like comprehensive enough to cover the most typical cases. So in general, having to create records is something we try to avoid. We sometimes do, for sure, but we try to avoid that as much as possible. And the reason is speed. Like fixtures are much faster than creating ad hoc records, because they you can dump like the fixture data set very quickly when the test suite starts, and then you can roll back the changes whenever each test runs. So that approach is incredibly fast. If you created records, when you create records ad hoc on every test, those insertions are much slower than the initial dump that we do with fixtures. So, okay, so Alex is asking about RESTful routes, how to design them and such. I think this will be like the subject of a whole episode, but we are indeed we lean towards creating RESTful routes like almost all the times. RESTful routes, there are many benefits. They play great with how HTTP work, and a wonderful side effect or consequence of using them is that you end up with small controllers that are highly cohesive, like doing one single thing. And that comes by design, right? Because you're trying to represent like the resources that your application exposed as nouns you can act on using for verbs. So by definition, controllers remain very small and very focused. And I think this kind of links with what I talked in the last video, talking about Rails architectures, about how we don't use service objects, because our controllers are already doing the same high-level orchestration role that service objects should play, and that they remain very thin and very cohesive in the way we use them. So the question is about that some models, like comment doesn't nest inside a card, but all the comments nest inside like engagement. By the way, this comment about engagement made me realize that we are not using these engagement models or controllers anymore. That was part of a previous workflow we were supporting in Fizzy. So I just created a pull request to remove engagements because they were not used. Yeah, regarding the question, what this person is asking is, so for example, if we go, well, this is a good example, like, for example, for postponing a card, we associate this not known model to them, and this is in the namespace card not known, right? If we go to this model, this is nested inside a card, while other model like comment, they are like root models, right? I don't think this is, sorry, we are here. I don't think this is, written in stone, or that we follow very, very hard rules here. What I think the reasoning here is that a comment is kind of, I mean, it depends on a card to exist, because you need a card for a comment to exist in Fizzy, but as an entity, it is important enough on its own. So for example, a comment can generate events, and you can get those events in the timeline, and you can reach a comment that way. Or they generate activity that we send in emails. Comments are like, they have like a substance outside of what a card is. However, there are other models, like Engageable was back in the day, but like this Not Now model, or Goldness, the Goldness model we used to flag a card like golden. Like if we removed the card prefix and namespace, you would say, what is this Goldness doing? Is this something you can attach to any model? Is this something that has entity outside of the card that acts as the host? And the answer is no. So that's the reasoning we try to follow. But I don't know. In general, I think this is a kind of subjective territory, and maybe different programmers have different views here. Those are my thoughts, at least. So Nick is asking about integrating Ruby LLM into Fizzy. And yes, so during the development of Fizzy, we explored implementing certain AI features, and we used the Ruby LLM gem to do that. The gem was fantastic, by the way. It worked very, very smoothly in all our explorations. We eventually dropped all the features we had built that were highly exploratory. Fizzy back in the day, it had a command bar that you could enter commands with a certain syntax. We built that. Then we thought of introducing an LLM-powered layer on top of that, so that you could use natural language to say things like close this card or assign this card to, I don't know, Kevin or whatever. We built that, and that was working pretty well. But it was falling short in some other scenarios, because as soon as you have that in place, it's natural that you want to start asking for things more fancy or more sophisticated, and it wasn't covering it wasn't working as well as we wanted it to work. Then Stanko explored another feature, which was Fizzy Ask, where you would have like a chat with a it's like if it was ChatGPT inside Fizzy, where you could ask and interact with the system that way. We used a Ruby LLM feature called Tools to do that. Again, it was working well, but it wasn't working well in all the scenarios. Sometimes it would provide like answers that were kind of poor, or you wouldn't get like the quality you would expect, or the quality we want to set for our products. So we dropped that feature too. We had summaries. We explored building weekly summaries of the activity that you've done. Again, it was working well in many cases. In some other cases, the summaries were a little bit meh. So we dropped that too. So we explored quite a few AI avenues, but eventually we decided to launch without them because they were not good enough. We learned some good lessons, and I know that there are like a lot of interest in the company making AI work at the level we want it to work. So there will be more news here in the future, but that's the story of Fizzy and AI. Yeah, now I have a series of questions asking about multi-tenancy and why did you decide not to go with SQLite. So actually Fizzy, while we were using it internally, it was running on SQLite with a multi-tenancy setup in place. There was always like a theme that we were exploring, or that was kind of exploratory in nature. So the idea was like, we're going to make multi-tenancy work with SQLite. If by the end of the project we haven't managed to do that, to make it work as well as we want to, we are going to switch to MySQL. So that was kind of the idea here. This was mostly the work of Kevin McConnell and Mike D'Alessio. So I think they did terrific work in terms of the difficulties they faced and the sophistication of what they built, it was working well. The problem was that at the end of the project, we wanted to ship, there were some operational concerns regarding how were we going to offer like the level of availability we want for our applications. So we run our applications on multiple data centers. We can so if one data center fails, we can fail over the other data center. The databases are replicated so that we can still provide the service as expected without interruptions or without major interruptions. And we have a bunch of other efforts in place to ensure that we can offer very high availability. And doing that with SQLite was presenting some operational challenges that we were uncertain about. We didn't want to delay the launch beyond what the date we had set, and eventually we decided to go with MySQL, which is known territory for the company. Well, that's the story. Marcel is asking about why not use a TurboFrame with lazy loading as a pagination trigger, since it's already got an appearance observer. So, I mean, the reason if you do pagination with TurboFrames directly without anything else, one problem you have is that you will have TurboFrames nested inside TurboFrames, so that's not going to fly. So we have a system in place that involves a stimulus controller called Pagination stimulus controller. Pagination controller that kind of take the frame that is going to trigger and move it at the top of the page so that you get like a sequence of turbo frames containing the pages. And these turbo frames they refresh with morph, so that if you paginate, for example, in the activity timeline, and then the page refreshes because some event arrives, you get like the data smoothly updated, the paginated data smoothly updated that way. So that's what we are doing there for pagination. By the way, this, as you know, Fizzy is open source, so you can check all this AI stuff. You can dive into the pull requests. You can check this pagination code. Everything is in GitHub, basecamp/Fizzy if you want to check it. Finally, well, here I had two questions regarding the view layer. One is from Miguel, which is asking that you include view logic and even HTML snippets on your models. Is that the approach you usually follow? It's not. I think I know which parts you're referring to, and I'm going to review that next. But in general, that's not what we do. But I'm going to elaborate on that next. And Jordan was asking about the usage of template helpers, why a component system is not needed. And it's asking about delegate types. And, delegate types, there is something very exciting to bring light on delegate types that is in the oven right now. So I think you will get some good information there soon, but I'm going to focus on the view layer, okay? So regarding views, there've been I've seen some discussions recently talking about, Rails is missing something like view components because view helpers kind of fall short in some scenarios, and ERB templates are not enough. I'm going to share how we do it and our philosophy and some further thoughts there, okay? So I want to show you how we render this view, which is the activity timeline view, because it's a view that is interesting. It serves to show different scenarios of how we deal with complexity when we are rendering views. So if we go to first to this day timeline scope to concern, we see that this is invoking this set day timeline method that is setting this day timeline object, which is a plain Ruby object, as the main domain entity that the controller is setting so that the view can render it. So if I go now to the controller, I'm going to go to the view, because this view is showing several things, showing how we deal with views pretty well. So first of all, we use partials a lot. So we try to divide our views into smaller chunks with proper names to keep things organized, just like you try to divide your long methods into smaller methods, the same level of abstraction to make sense of the code or to make it easy to read. I think the same pattern is totally something you can apply to views. So we use partials to extract and to make code more readable. We also use helpers and view helpers in Rails. So the question is, when do you use a partial and when do you use a helper? So in this case, for example, if we go to the if we go to the timeline pagination frame tag, this is a helper method. This is rendering a turbo frame with some stimulus controller and some ID conventions. That's a very simple. That's a method that is returning a very simple HTML bit. In that case, helper works great. In other cases, such as for example add card button, the HTML you are rendering is more substantial. So in general, when the HTML to render is more substantial, and unless there is a compelling reason not to, I lean towards using partials, because they play better with composing HTML than helpers in Rails. And actually, I think that Rails could do something better there. Like we could have like something tighter to generate HTML in helpers. I'm not saying there is not margin for improvement there, but there is this discussion about whether we should use view components or we should use because partials and helpers like kind of fall short in some occasions. My take on this is that in general, partials and helpers work great for us. I think we cover probably 95% of the needs we have in our applications, in the way we work. Whenever people talk about replacing this with something else, I think that what we would have to see is something that is so much better. It's like night and day better than what we have now in order to embrace it. I think at least that will be my view. Think that in 37 signals, in the way we work, designers of 37 signals, they have a lot of agency and autonomy to make progress. You can go to the Fizzy repo at basecamp/Fizzy and just try to search close. I actually can do that. If I go here and I search closed pull request, where the author is Jason Sinders, which is one of the designers. The other one is 222 pull requests. If we go to Andy Smith, which is the other designer, 2072 pull requests. So designers, like, they get a lot of things done because they work autonomously. And they are not normal designers. They are incredibly talented. They are experts in HTML. They are expert in CSS. They can do Ruby. They can do Rails. They can do JavaScript. So they are folks with skills, let's say. But I think it's very important. Like this, to us, the view layer, these HTML templates are like the common ground where designers can iterate over, and we programmers step in and try to help to organize things or to tidy up things. But in general, the common ground is this HTML ERB template. So if we embraced like a more programmatic view to build these these views, I think that common ground will suffer, okay? Because it will be a more familiar way of building UI bits maybe for a programmer, or it could make for cool things at the programming side, but at the expense of losing, the familiarity and the powerful declarative nature of HTML that we all are familiar with. So, well, I agree that probably there is things we could do on, to make helpers more view helpers, or something that helps you generate HTML programmatically, more easily. I don't discuss that would be a benefit, or that there is some potential there for making things better. I'm skeptical that replacing this, like this index card, add card button with a view component that does this with a class in the middle. I'm skeptical that that's a life-changing approach to build user interfaces, and because it's not like significantly better, I don't find a very appealing case to embrace view components or other systems of components for views in Rails, to embrace that as a general way of building views. To me, that's not an appealing path with the current state of things. They normally say that a benefit of view components is that you can test them. The thing is that we rarely test our views. Like we test our views through integration tests testing Rails controllers essentially, but we rarely we focus on the expected outcome in terms of database modifications, kind of HTTP response. Very rarely we check like the views, the content of the views, to make sure we are generating the views we want to generate. The reason again is that building the reason is that views are like we keep iterating on views. Designers keep iterating on views even after something is shipped. They keep coming back and changing things. We don't want to write tests that get in the middle of that. Okay, so, and also another reason is that this is not like lacking that level of testing is not a recurring source of bugs for us. So in our experience, this works pretty well in the way we work. With our approach, we are not missing view tests or tests for view specific things isolated from controllers, so that you can build a comprehensive suite of tests for your views. That's not a need we have. So that kind of goes in the line of we are not missing view components or similar technologies. Something I wanted to show you is that we do sometimes, this is rare, but we sometimes find that helpers fell short for organizing like complex view needs. And this view is actually an example here. So let me show you how we render a day. If we go to events day, to the events day template, we go to these events day timeline columns. You can see what I was referring about the compose method philosophy. Here, this is doing two things. We have two partials at the same level of abstraction. This is easy to understand. It keeps things organized, and it works very well for us. So if I go to the columns template, here we can see how this is saying render this column partial, and I'm passing this column, day timeline, added column, day timeline, added column, day timeline, closed column. Okay, so here we can see how the view is asking the domain entity for this column object that it can render. Okay, if we go to those methods and we go to see how those methods are created, we can see how this is returning a column, again a plain Ruby object that you can ask for things like give me your title, or give me group the events by hour so that I can render them. So if I go to the view, we will see how these templates are interacting with those column objects. So you can totally make the case that those column object, this column object here, this is acting like a presenter object, right? This is wrapping like this is offering to the views, this is offering to the view layer an API that is built to satisfy the view layer needs. So this is like a kind of a presenter object, like with the service object case that I talked about the other day. We don't use the presenter bit in the name, so we don't call this a column presenter, just like we don't use sign up service for the sign up thing. These are just plain objects that we are using to make rendering our views nicer and to keep the code more maintainable. If we go to the view, we can see how this is kind of more or less easy to follow and easy to understand, which is the whole goal. And so it means it's easy to maintain with this approach. Now, I want to point out that doing this is rare. Like, it's rare that we resort to that. We normally do this when we are using helpers. We are using helper objects. Normally, you start to find that you need to create helpers that invoke other helpers, and they are always passing the same data through. So sometimes that's a good signal that you need that some missing abstraction is there, right? Like, you're missing some abstraction there. So in this case, actually, if you go to the pull requests or to the commits to these views, you will find like that was actually the case. We had a system of helper objects. It was kind of messy. At some point we said, this is super messy. We are going to extract these things or these additional abstractions. Okay, so that's one example. Another example of this, let me go to this view when we are rendering. No, it's not here. This is the rendering the column. I want to show you when we are rendering. Oh yeah, here we are rendering the events specifically. Okay, so when we render, for example, an event specifically, I'm trying to locate the code, which is here. Okay. Yeah, here's the line. Okay, so when we are rendering an event here, the body of the event, like you will handle this, or you assigned Kevin that piece of text is rendered here. Okay, so here this is another example where we can ask the event model description for this user, because the description you see changes depending on who you are, and we are rendering a 2HTML view of that description. If we go here, we are going to find again that this description for method, which is at the event model, is returning this description object, and this description object has two methods, one to render as HTML and another one to render as plain text. This is because for rendering webhooks, we use this version, and for rendering the views, we use this one. So again, this is another case where we had like a salad of helper methods. It was quite messy. At some point we said, okay, we are going to refactor this. We're going to extract this description entity. And these are presentation concerns, and this is served from a model. This is rare. It's not that we are always doing this, but in this case it plays, I think it's a good design, it's a great design, because we say, oh, event, give me your description for this user, and we render that as HTML. Just like you can render the HTML or the plain version of an action text attribute, right? This is kind of similar to that. So I think I think these two scenarios are the only two scenarios where we are doing this, creating this sort of presenter object. I think that in general, templates and helpers work great 90% of the times, and you can always create, and we certainly do create, these additional kind of helper objects or presenter objects, or however you want to call them, these additional objects that perform a proper implementation of more complex behaviors. Okay, so this is something we do. But again, if you check our views, this is rare. Okay, we are templates and view helpers all the time. We use that all the time. All right. So I think we are going to. There was a last question here, which is testing. How much is enough and of what kind? I think this is a great question by Miguel. I think there is a great quote by Kent Beck talking about tests. Like the goal of tests is giving you confidence about your system. So this is important to have in mind, because sometimes, additional traits like the speed of the test suite or the coverage or other aspects become like a goal themselves, a goal by themselves. And you need to keep in mind that the tests are, they are not free. They take time to write and they take time to maintain, which is very, very important. So I used to have a more naive and purist approach towards testing when I started many years ago, or when I started with automated testing, at least. These days, I really value tests that test the real thing, integrated tests that kind of exercise like the full stack, and that you can execute as if you were observing the system as a black box that you interact with and where you observe the outcomes. Okay, so I don't love tests that are based on stubbing the internals of the classes, unless that's necessary, of course, or because you need to mock out some dependency or something like that, then it's justified. But in general, I like the model tests that are testing that the database is get the data you expect. If you have a system of objects, I like testing the entity that is orchestrating the system of objects to try to see if the outcome is what I want to see. So in general, I don't think it's a good smell that if you have that if when you are going to change the internals of an object, tests broke. Okay, that's kind of a smell that you're not doing things right. So tests that test the real thing, being mindful about what to test and what not to test, because tests aren't free. And I think it's hard to give very strict deadlines, but if you check our test suite in Fizzy, what you will find is controller tests, which are integration tests, exercising our endpoints and trying to see if the outcomes is what we expect. You're going to find like unit tests for models that, again, trying to follow this philosophy. And that's pretty much what we are doing. We have like some smoke tests, very high level. We have experimented with system tests quite a bit. Eventually, we don't think like the trade-offs are worth it. They bring value. They are valuable, but they are also slow. They can be brittle. They are slow to write and to maintain and to run. And eventually, we decided that they were not worth it. A final note I wanted to comment is that none of this, I think nothing in software is like hardcore rules you must follow all the time. Okay, because sometimes with general advice, you sometimes take the advice too far. I want to show you a very recent test of something of a pull request I actually merged today, which is related to enforcing storage limits in Fizzy for the for the SaaS side of the equation, for the SaaS service that we run on Fizzy. The pull request is in GitHub and you can check it. The thing is that when you are going to create a card, depending on the storage you are using, we want to show a certain notice, and depending on the card count, on your card count, we want to show certain messages. For example, inviting you to upgrade if you are close to reach one of those limits, or directly preventing you from creating cards if you are out of limits. And the view was kind of involved in that regard. And to gain confidence over the system, I decided to write a test, which is, I think it's card creation test. Yeah, here it is. So this is a test that is doing two things I said I don't like to do. One is using and stubbing certain internal, not internal, but stubbing certain method that I could, this is not a column I could write easily, so I decided to go with a stub to simulate different storage situations, because with the system we use to track storage, we are not storing that at the account level. There is a more involved system under the hood, and I decided to go with that to simulate different storage situations because it was the easier option at hand. Another thing is that here in this view, I'm indeed, and this is the main purpose of these tests, I'm checking that the output in I'm checking that I'm seeing like the right message I expect to see in the output, which is something we rarely do. But in this case, that was what I wanted, because I wasn't certain about like is this robust enough. So it's an example of a test where I'm doing two things that I have pointed out that we rarely do. So, you know, there is no rules that you say that you need to fulfill all the time, or, you know, never do that, never do this. People tend to be very categoric, and in software, I don't think that plays very, very well. Okay, this is all. Again, the video took longer than I expected. I hope you find it useful. I wish you all Merry Christmas, and thank you for your time. Take care.